Good to be back, and happy Easter. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. I want to get back to system software. We're actually going to look a little bit more about how a bunch of system software is built, and then we are going to delve into how to take advantage of computer architecture in terms of our own personal productivity, which I think is probably more useful than actually thinking about, well, this is the way system software is built. But the piece of system software I want to look at is an old architecture called batch processing. And lots of stuff, even today, uses this model. If you looked at the way that the assembler works and our microcode machine, they would fall into this general category of batch processing types of things. If you look in the back-end operation of most banks, you'll find lots of batch processing. If you look at how the telephone company manages to take computers that are probably slower than the PC or your laptop and get out thousands of bills on them, you're probably looking at batch processing. And folks like the IRS are still doing this. Software that they wrote in the 50s and 60s is still being run today very successfully with this batch processing model. So, if it's successful and it works, why break it? Why change it? And this is one of those ones that has been around for a long time, but it's kind of a simple model about how things work. And here's the algorithm. You read in a record of data. Usually what starts out is you have a great big file that has a whole bunch of records of data. And you notice I didn't say a line. These days, usually you're reading in a line of data. But these things were built for systems that didn't have files that had lines, they had records. You do some validation on that record. Usually the validation is checking values, making certain that things are in range. You do some processing on the record, which usually involves a database. Like if it's a person's bill that you're building, you're looking up their account number, you're looking up specific stuff about them. And then you do some processing, usually updating the database and generating something like, for this particular person, a bill, or for this particular person, an approval for a loan. Depends on who it is. And then you do some summary stuff that you're probably accumulating as you're going through, like how much was the total for all the bills during this time period. Then you go back to the beginning and you do the next record. So the processing tends to be rather simple. It's not the most exciting stuff in a certain point of view. On the other hand, it takes advantage of some capabilities of computers to do things repeatedly over and over and over again at scale. And we're going to talk about the modern software that we all know and love, GUI interfaces, that by and large doesn't give us the capability to do things at scale. I mean, one of the fundamental things that you figure out about computers is they're really good at doing repetitive tasks. Not just once, but millions of times. Billions of times. And batch processing takes great advantage of that. So when we talk about GUI software, one of the things that we've lost out of that perspective is doing this at scale. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I work with a company that has images, and they needed to do watermarks on images, and they were using this nice piece of GUI software where they'd open an image file, drag in a watermark, position it, combine the layers, and output the file. And they had a person doing this nice, simple task over and over again. And I basically built them a script. We're going to talk a little bit about scripts later. That did this with an image processing command line tool called ImageMagick. And they had about literally 17,000 images to process. And they were taking about 30 seconds an image. So two every minute. With the script to do it, it was done with the 17,000 images in 3 minutes, something like that. So that's the power of batch processing as opposed to building stuff one at a time. So our modern world is loaded with these wonderful GUI interfaces. Let's take a look at that next.